It was a cold, quiet morning when Ethan walked through the misty forest holding a small metal box. Inside were 2 pieces of bread, a few apples, and a warm drink. He followed the same narrow path every day. The birds no longer sang there, and even the wind seemed afraid to whisper. At the end of the path stood a broken spaceship, half buried in the ground. Smoke no longer came from it, but the metal was still warm to the touch. Inside that ship lived them, an alien mother and her small daughter. Ethan had found them 3 weeks ago. The ship had crashed near the forest, shaking the earth like thunder. When he first peeked inside, he saw them, pale, with bright silver eyes and glowing blue veins. They looked weak, afraid, and lost. The little one was crying softly, her voice almost like a song. He didn't run. He couldn't. Something in their eyes stopped him. That day he left food for them on a rock near the ship and walked away. The next day the food was gone. Since then, he came every morning, always with food, water, and warm clothes. The mother, whom he later called Lyra, never spoke at first. She only looked at him with those cold, sad eyes. Her daughter, Mira, would hide behind her mother's arm, peeking at him curiously. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, they began to trust him. A fragile connection, Ethan learned that Lyra and Mira had come from a planet called Valara, far beyond the known stars. They were not soldiers or explorers. They were refugees. Their home had been destroyed in a war with another alien race. Lyra had escaped with her daughter in a small craft, but something went wrong and they crashed on Earth. Earth was not friendly to them. The air was heavy and the cold bit their skin. Their ship was damaged and they could not contact anyone. Lyra had tried to fix it, but her tools were useless here. Every day, Ethan brought supplies, canned food, blankets, medicine. He didn't understand their language, but their eyes said enough. Gratitude, fear, hope. Sometimes he talked to them even if they didn't respond. "You'll be okay," he said once. "You just need time." Mira had started to smile when she saw him. She would run to the door when he arrived, her small hands waving. Lyra, though still cautious, began to trust him, but every time Ethan turned to leave, he felt something strange, a quiet sadness, as if the forest itself was warning him. The secret. They kept one evening. Ethan noticed strange lights in the sky. Blue dots moving fast, then disappearing. Lyra saw them too. Her face changed. Fear, deep and real. She rushed to cover the ship with branches and mud. "Who are they?" Ethan asked softly, but she only shook her head. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those lights, about what might happen if someone else found them. He knew the world would not be kind. Governments, soldiers, scientists, they would not help. They would study. He decided then he couldn't let that happen. The day everything changed. It was early morning when he reached the ship again. He carried more food and some batteries. But something was wrong. The air smelled of metal and smoke. The forest was silent, too silent. When he entered the clearing, he saw it. The door of the ship was open. Lyra sat beside Mira, holding her close. The little girl was crying again. There was a burn mark on the ground, like something had landed and left quickly. Ethan knelt down beside them. "What happened?" he asked. Lyra looked at him. This time she spoke. Her voice was soft but shaking. "They found us." "Who?" She looked toward the sky. "Hunters." Ethan's heart raced. He didn't know what kind of hunters she meant, but he could see the fear in her eyes. He looked around. "You can't stay here," he said. "They'll come back." Lyra didn't answer. She just held her daughter tighter. Ethan took a deep breath. He had been bringing them food for weeks. But now it wasn't enough. He stood up, looked at Lyra, and said the words that would change everything. "Come live with me." Lyra stared at him, confused. Her silver eyes glowed softly in the dim light. Mira stopped crying and looked up at him too. For a long moment, no one spoke. The forest stood still. The air felt heavy with something, Not fear, but fate. And then, the mother nodded. That was the moment Ethan knew his life would never be the same again. Would you like me to continue with part 2 next, around 700? Words continuing right after "come live with me"? I'll make sure it builds more tension and shows how humans react when they discover something alien living among them. Lyra hesitated. Her silver eyes looked into Ethan's for a long moment as if searching for danger behind his kindness. She could not understand all his words, but she understood his heart. The human's tone was gentle, and his eyes carried no threat. Only care. Only trust. Mira clung to her mother's arm, frightened but curious. Her little blue fingers glowed faintly in the shadows of the forest. She whispered something in her own language, a soft hum like music. Lyra nodded once, slowly. And that single nod changed everything. Ethan helped them stand. Their skin was cold, almost icy to touch. Lyra wore a torn silver suit, now covered in dirt and leaves. Mira had a small blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The spaceship behind them was dying. Sparks flickered along its sides like the last breaths of a machine trying to survive. "Let's go," Ethan said quietly. "It's not safe anymore." He led them through the forest path, careful with every step. The fog was thick, and the sun struggled to break through. Birds scattered above as if warning the woods of something unnatural moving below. By the time they reached his small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, the morning light had turned gold. It wasn't much. A single room, a kitchen corner, a fireplace. But it was warm. Safe. A New World Lyra stepped inside first, scanning. Everything with sharp eyes, the walls, the shelves, even the ceiling. Mira followed, holding her mother's hand tightly. The air smelled of wood smoke and coffee. Ethan smiled softly. "You can rest here," he said. "No one comes here. You'll be safe." Lyra didn't reply. Instead, she placed a glowing device, no bigger than a pebble, on the table. A soft blue light spread around the room, scanning the air. When it faded, she finally spoke, her voice clear but tired. "No signal. They cannot track. Here." Ethan frowned. "They? The hunters?" She nodded. "They? Not from my world. Different, dangerous." He didn't ask more. He could see fear in her face, the kind of fear that comes from running too long. He lit the fireplace. The warmth filled the room, and Mira's small face relaxed for the first time. Ethan handed her a cup of warm milk. She sniffed it first, then smiled shyly before drinking. Lyra watched her daughter, and for a second, Ethan saw something human in her. A mother's love. The stranger's questions, as night came, the forest outside grew silent. Only the wind moved between the trees. Inside, Ethan sat across from Lyra, who was now trying to repair a broken metal band from her wrist. "I don't understand," Ethan said quietly. "Why would anyone want to hunt you?" Lyra looked up. "We carry something, a map. It leads to an energy source older than stars. Many races want it, to control it." Her voice trembled slightly. "They destroyed my home for it." Ethan leaned forward. "Do you still have this map?" Lyra nodded. She touched her wristband. "Hidden. Only I can open." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, a wolf howled. Inside, Ethan's heart pounded. He had not just saved strangers. He had brought something powerful, maybe dangerous, into his home. But when he looked at Mira, sleeping peacefully on the couch, he couldn't regret it. Signs in the sky the next morning, Ethan woke early. He stepped outside, breathing the cold air. The forest was calm again, but something felt wrong. A faint humming filled the air, deep and mechanical. He looked up. In the distance, beyond, the trees, 3 small lights moved slowly in the cloud, blue, glowing, silent. His stomach twisted. "They're back," he whispered. He rushed inside. "Lyra, you need to see this." She was already awake. The same blue light glowed in her wristband. "They are scanning," she said. "Searching. Not far." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Then we leave." She shook her head. "No, they scan for my signal. If I hide, they find me. But—" She looked toward the window. "They do not know you." Ethan frowned. "You mean me? You can walk among your kind. Hide us." He stared at her for a moment, then realized what she meant. She wanted him to help them move through the human world, unseen. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll get the truck ready." The beginning of a dangerous journey. As they packed a few supplies, Mira ran to the window and pointed up. "Lights," she said in a soft, melodic tone. Ethan saw them too, closer now, moving like silent ghosts above the trees. He whispered, "We don't have much time." Lyra touched his shoulder. "You do not have to help us. It is dangerous." Ethan looked at her. "I know, but you're not alone anymore." Outside, the hum grew louder. The sky flashed once, a blue beam scanning the forest floor. Lyra grabbed Mira and hid behind the table. Ethan ducked beside them, heart racing. Then, silence. The beam faded. The lights drifted away, disappearing beyond the mountains. They all sat frozen for a moment. Finally, Lyra whispered, "They will come again. Stronger." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready." The camera, of fate, zooms out. A small cabin hidden in the woods, 3 lives tied together by chance. 1 human, 2 aliens, and a storm waiting beyond the stars to be continued. The forest behind them burned like a dying star. Blue fire licked the trees, sending black smoke curling into the sky. Ethan held Mira close against his chest, running through the tall grass until his lungs screamed for air. Lyra followed behind, limping slightly, her silver skin smeared with dirt and blood. When they finally stopped, they were miles away from the cabin. The night sky stretched wide above them, filled with strange glowing clouds. The hunter ships moving slowly like silent predators. Mira's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, frightened but calm. Ethan set her down gently. "We need shelter," he said, panting. Lyra nodded. "There is a town, north, but humans there. May not be kind." He gave a small, tired smile. "They don't have to be kind. Just blind." A stranger's help be dawn, they reached a narrow road cutting through the hills. Old cars passed by, engines humming, unaware of what was hidden in the trees beside them. Ethan covered Lyra and Mira with a thick blanket and waited for the right moment. Then he heard it. An old pickup truck approaching, its engine coughing. Ethan waved his arms. "Hey, stop!" The truck slowed. An older man with a long gray beard leaned out the window. "You lost, son?" "Yeah," Ethan said quickly. "Our car broke down. Need a ride to the next town." The man's eyes moved to the bundle in the back, Lyra and Mira hiding beneath the blanket. "You got family with you?" Ethan nodded. "My wife and daughter?" "They're cold, please." The man studied him for a moment, then sighed. "All right, hop in." As they drove down the winding road, Lyra whispered from under the blanket, "He does not believe you." Ethan whispered back, "He doesn't have to. Just keep quiet." But the man did believe something, not Ethan's lie, but something stranger. Every few minutes he looked at the rearview mirror, his eyes sharp. Finally he said, "You're not the first ones running from the forest." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" The man gave a half smile. "Couple nights ago, lights in the sky. Government trucks all over the hills. Folks say they found something. Not human." Ethan glanced at Lyra. Her expression hardened. The man continued, "Name's Harris. Used to work for them. Now I help people like you. People running from what they shouldn't have seen." Ethan hesitated. "You would believe in aliens?" Harris grinned. "Believe? Son, I've met one." The bunker. They followed Harris to an old barn on the edge of the desert. From the outside, it looked empty. Broken windows, rusted roof. But inside, there was a hidden metal door under the floorboards. He opened it, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. "Welcome to the bunker," he said. The air below was cold and smelled of dust. The bunker was filled with old computers, radio parts, and maps marked with strange symbols. "You built all this?" Ethan asked. Harris nodded. "Used to track UFO signals for the military." They shut me down when I started asking questions. But I kept listening. Lyra stepped forward, removing her hood. Harris didn't flinch. He looked at her with calm eyes, not fear, not shock. "You're from out there, aren't you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Valara," Harris smiled faintly. "Heard that name once before." Ethan frowned. "Before from who?" Harris walked to an old file cabinet and pulled out a yellowed photo. It showed a group of men in military uniforms, and behind them a tall figure with glowing eyes. "They came in 1978, Harris said. Said they were searching for a lost energy source. Looks like your friends are still looking." Lyra's face went pale. "The Seekers. They destroyed Valara for that power." Harris nodded. "And now they're here. On Earth. The secret of the core." Ethan leaned against the wall. "If they want the core, they'll come for it." Lyra looked at him sharply. "You hit it well?" "Yes, but they'll find the forest soon." Harris turned toward her. "That core, what does it do?" She hesitated. "It is a map. To an ancient power, but not a weapon. A creation spark, the energy that made worlds." Harris's eyes widened. "You're saying it can create life?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, or end it, if in wrong hands." Ethan rubbed his face. "So if they get it, we're done." "Worse," Lyra said softly. "They will make Earth their new factory. Their new Valara." A low rumble shook the bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling. Harris turned pale. "They found us." Lights flashed outside, blue beams sweeping across the ground. Lyra grabbed Mira and looked at Ethan. "They are many. We cannot fight them." Ethan grabbed a metal pipe and looked at her with burning eyes. "Then we don't fight. We outsmart them." The plan. He turned to Harris. "You said you can track signals?" Harris nodded. "Yes, through old satellite channels. Then we use them," Ethan said. "We make them think the core is somewhere else." Lyra understood instantly. "A false signal," Ethan grinned. "Exactly." Harris quickly typed into an old computer. "Give me a few minutes." Outside, shadows moved, tall metallic shapes glowing red. The Seekers were closing in. Ethan stood by the stairs, gripping his weapon, ready to protect them. Harris hit the last key. The computer beeped, sending a pulse into the air. "Done," he shouted. "They'll follow it, far away from here." The ground trembled as the Seekers turned toward the north, chasing the false signal. Lyra looked at Ethan. "You saved us again." Ethan smiled weakly. "For now." Above them, the desert wind howled like a warning, and the stars shimmered as if watching their next move. The desert was quiet again. The Seekers had followed the false signal north, their ships vanishing into the horizon like falling stars. But Ethan knew it wouldn't last. Machines didn't sleep, and they never gave up. In the bunker, the lights flickered weakly. Harris sat by the radio, tapping wires together, his face half hidden in shadow. "They took the bait," he said. "But they'll figure it out soon." Ethan wiped sweat from his face. "Then we use what time we have. We need to move, tonight." Lyra stood by the metal door, holding Mira close. The little one's eyes glowed faintly blue, soft but scared. "Move where?" she asked. Harris sighed. "There's an old research facility in the mountains. They shut it down years ago. But it's got power, and more important, it's off every satellite map. You could hide there." Ethan looked at him. "Why help us, Harris?" "You don't even know us." The old man gave a tired smile. "Because once I didn't help someone like her, and I've been paying for it ever since." The journey begins by nightfall. They left the bunker. The stars stretched wide above, and the wind carried the smell of dry earth. Harris drove the truck while Ethan sat beside him, scanning the dark road ahead. Lyra and Mira hid under a tarp in the back, whispering softly in their alien tongue. Hours passed before the road curved into the mountains. The engine coughed and rattled, but Harris kept it moving. "Almost there," he said. Then, headlights flashed in the rearview mirror. A black SUV was following them, its lights dim, its speed steady. Ethan tensed. "You expecting company?" Harris frowned. "No, and that ain't one of the Seekers, and that's human." The SUV closed in. A spotlight burst through the darkness, blinding them. "Hold on!" Harris shouted. The truck swerved off the road, crashing through dry bushes. The SUV followed, engines roaring. Gunfire ripped through the silence. Bullets sparking off the metal sides. "Get down!" Ethan yelled, pulling Harris's arm as a bullet shattered the window. Harris hit the brakes hard. "We can't outrun them." Ethan grabbed the shotgun from the floor. Then we make them regret it. The ambush, the SUV screeched to a stop. 3 men in black suits jumped out, holding advanced rifles that hummed with blue light. Not military, not normal. Ethan fired once, hitting the ground near their feet. The men scattered behind rocks. Lyra climbed out of the truck, her wristband glowing. "Ethan, move." She raised her hand and a wave of blue energy burst forward. The ground shook, sending dust flying. One of the men was thrown back, his weapon sparking. "Stay down," Ethan shouted to Mira. Harris crawled toward the truck's side and opened a small case. Inside were 3 glowing metal spheres. "EMP grenades," he said. "Old tech, but still bite." He rolled one across the ground. A flash of white light filled the air. Boom. The rifles of the attackers went dead, their lights flickering out. Ethan charged forward, tackling one to the ground. He punched hard, knocking the man's helmet off. Beneath it was a human face, pale, cold, and marked with a strange black tattoo. A-23 Ethan froze. "Who are you?" The man smirked, blood on his lip. "We're not your enemies. We're your government." Ethan's heart dropped. The agency after the fight, the last attacker lay unconscious. Harris tied him with rope and dragged him into the truck's light. "What the hell does that mean?" Ethan demanded. Harris's expression darkened. "I was afraid of this. They're from Division A-23, a Black Ops branch. They deal with non-human encounters. Officially, they don't exist." Lyra frowned. "Humans hunt their own kind. For helping others?" Ethan looked away. "Yeah, we're good at that." The captured agent laughed weakly. "You think the Seekers are the problem? They're already here because you brought them. The energy you're hiding, Earth wants it too." Ethan grabbed him by the collar. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," the man hissed. "We've been tracking alien signals for months. Your little forest stunt lit up every radar. Headquarters wants the alien and the child alive." Harris clenched his fists. "They'll experiment on them just like before." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not while I'm breathing." He looked at Lyra. "We're going to that facility. We'll find out who's really pulling the strings." The mountains awake. They drove until dawn. The road climbed higher, twisting through fog and stone. The air grew colder, thinner. Finally, the facility came into view. A massive concrete building half buried in the rock. Rusted gates stood open and broken lights flickered along the walls. "This place," Harris whispered, "used to be a communications base. Now it's forgotten." Lyra stared at it, her eyes glowing faintly. "No, not forgotten, hidden." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the building's roof. Faint symbols were carved into the concrete, the same glowing lines as the ones on her ship. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "How did they get there?" Lyra turned toward him slowly. "Because someone from Valara has already been here." The wind howled through the mountains, carrying a strange metallic echo, like a whisper from another world. Ethan looked at the building again and realized they weren't the first visitors. They were stepping into someone else's plan. The sun had not yet risen when they reached the concrete giant. The mountain wind howled through broken windows and the old structure seemed alive, whispering with the ghosts of a time long gone. Dust floated in the air like slow snow. Ethan felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. "This place, it feels wrong," he muttered. Lyra placed her hand on one of the glowing symbols carved into the wall. The lines flickered faintly as if waking from a long sleep. "These markings," she said quietly, "are not human. They belong to my ancestors." Harris rubbed his neck. "Then what the hell was the U.S. government doing building over them?" Ethan pushed the metal gate open, and a deep echo filled the valley. "Let's find out." Echoes of the past inside. The corridors stretched endlessly, gray, rusted, filled with old machines and broken glass. Faded warning signs in English and strange alien runes covered the walls. Power cables hung like vines from the ceiling. Mira walked beside her mother, small and curious, her eyes glowing just enough to light the way. "Home?" she whispered in her soft musical voice. Lyra touched her head gently. "No, my child. Not home, and a memory of one." They reached a large steel door. The paint on it had peeled away, revealing a symbol shaped like an eye inside a triangle, half human, half alien. Harris whistled. "Now that's new." Ethan pressed his shoulder against the door and pushed. With a loud groan, it opened. Beyond it lay a huge chamber filled with strange machines, all powered by a dim blue light pulsing from the floor. In the center stood a glass pod, cracked, fogged from the inside. Something moved within it. The survivor, Ethan, stepped closer. Inside the pod was a figure, tall, thin, with silver blue skin and glowing eyes almost identical to Lyra's. Tubes ran from his body into the floor, where faint energy flickered. Lyra gasped. "Valoran!" "Survivor." The man's eyes opened suddenly, bright and sharp. The glass hissed as it slid open. He stumbled forward, breathing hard. Ethan caught him before he fell. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. The alien's voice was weak but clear. "Name, Kale, scientist of Valara." "I came before the war." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "Before? That was centuries ago." Kale nodded slowly. "I was sent to study this world, Earth. Humans had begun to rise. But then the Seekers came. They followed me here." Ethan frowned. "You mean the Seekers have been here for centuries?" Kale looked at him with heavy eyes. "They never left." The Hidden Truth Harris turned on an old terminal. To everyone's surprise, it flickered to life. Lines of alien code mixed with English scrolled across the screen. "What is this?" Ethan asked. Kale pointed at the display. "A connection. The humans and my people once worked together. A secret alliance. They tried to understand the creation spark. But power divides even friends. The humans betrayed us. They sealed me here, alive." Lyra clenched her fists. "They used our technology." "Yes," Kale said. "And in doing so, they woke the Seekers again." Ethan's stomach twisted. "So Earth caused this?" Kale nodded. "The Seekers see no difference now, human or Valaran. To them, all life that touches the spark must be destroyed." A low rumble shook the floor. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They've found us," Harris said. The awakening Kale's eyes glowed brighter. "No, not yet. That is the facility waking." Machines around them hummed to life, lights flashing one by one. Energy surged through the walls, and the old power core deep underground began to beat like a heart. Lyra stepped back. "Kale, what are you doing?" He looked at her. "Finishing what I started. The spark is buried here, and a fragment of it. If I can charge it, it may protect this planet." Ethan frowned. "Or destroy it." Kale smiled sadly. "Sometimes both are the same." The floor split open, revealing a swirling orb of blue-white light deep below. Alive, spinning, powerful. It pulsed in rhythm with Mira's glowing hands. "She's connected," Lyra whispered. "She has Valoran blood, and the spark feels her." Kale looked at Mira with awe. "The child. She is the key." The warning outside, thunder rolled, but not from the sky. Harris ran to the window slit. "We've got company, and those government drones again." Lyra turned to Kale. "We cannot let them take the spark." Kale nodded. "Then you must leave." The Seekers and the human, they both want the same thing now. Ethan grabbed his arm. "What about you?" Kale smiled faintly. "I'm already part of this place. I'll buy you time." The lights around them flared brighter, and the machines began to hum louder, faster. The ground shook again. "Go!" Kale shouted. Ethan lifted Mira into his arms, and Lyra followed close behind. Harris grabbed his bag and one last look at the glowing core. "I hope you know what you're doing, old man." Kyle's final words echoed as they ran. "Protect the child. She carries what the universe forgot." Outside, the mountain rumbled as blue light burst from its heart, shooting into the sky like lightning. The world below trembled. Ethan looked back once. The facility was glowing like a second sun. He didn't know if Kale had saved them or doomed them. But one thing was certain. The war for Earth had just begun. The mountain burned from within. Blue lightning cracked across the sky, turning night into day. The wind howled like a living thing as Ethan, Lyra, Mira, and Harris stumbled down the rocky path. Behind them, the old facility roared like a beast waking from a 1,000-year sleep. Mira clung to her mother's arm, her glowing eyes reflecting the chaos above. Ethan looked back. The peak was split open, light spilling from it like blood. "Kyle did something," he shouted over the thunder. Lyra's face was pale. "He awakened the spark. It's alive now." "Alive?" Harris coughed. "It looks like it's trying to blow the mountain apart." Lyra shook her head. "It's protecting itself, but soon it will call them." Ethan frowned. "Who?" "The Seekers. All of them." The sky opens, a deafening hum filled the air. Clouds spiraled above the mountain, pulling together into a storm that glowed blue and red. Then out of the center, 3 enormous shapes emerged, dark, metallic, alive. Their wings stretched across the sky like shadows swallowing light. The Seekers had arrived. Their ships hovered over the valley, scanning the ground with red beams. One of them stopped, right above Ethan's group. "Run!" he shouted. They raced down the mountain trail as the beam struck the rocks, turning stone into molten glass. Harris tripped, but Ethan grabbed his arm, pulling him up just in time. Lyra turned and raised her hand. A wave of blue energy exploded from her palm, colliding with the beam. For a moment the air shimmered, two powers meeting, ancient and human. The beam flickered and the Seeker ship pulled back, confused. Mira cried out. The light from her small hands glowed brighter than before, brighter than her mother's. The spark inside her was answering the call. Lyra gasped. "She's merging with it." Ethan knelt beside Mira. "Hey, stay with me. Look at me, kid." But Mira wasn't scared. She looked up at him, calm and glowing. "It wants to live," she whispered. "It's showing me things." Visions of the spark. For a second, everything froze. Ethan saw flashes, not just of stars, but of entire galaxies being born. Planets rising from dust. Light shaping life. The spark wasn't a weapon. It was creation itself, the first heartbeat of the universe. Then he saw something darker. The Seekers feeding on that energy, draining worlds dry until nothing remained. He gasped and fell back. Lyra caught him. "You saw it too?" He nodded slowly. "If the Seekers get her, it's over. Not just for Earth and for everything." The final stand, they reached the valley floor. Harris's truck waited where they left it, half covered in dust. Ethan threw the doors open. "Get in." Lyra hesitated, looking back at the mountain. "Kyle is still inside. If the spark breaks free, then he'll make sure it doesn't," Ethan said. He knew what he was doing. The truck roared to life, speeding down the desert road. Behind them, the sky blazed with red and blue fire as the Seekers fired beams into the mountain. The entire valley shook then. A voice echoed in their minds. Calm. Familiar. Ethan. "Lyra, it was Kale." "Kale?" Lyra whispered. "How? The spark has chosen the child. You must protect her. She is not just Valaran or human. She is both. She is the bridge." Ethan gripped the wheel tighter. "What do we do?" "Take her to the stars. Beyond Earth. There's a place the Seekers cannot reach in the cradle of creation. Find it." The connection faded. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "He gave his life for us." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then let's make it count." The light of sacrifice, a sudden explosion, tore the mountain apart. A wave of blue light rushed outward, swallowing the valley. Ethan hit the brakes. The light swept over them, but it didn't burn. It passed through like wind, warm and gentle. In the sky, the Seeker ships began to falter. Their red lights dimmed, their engines flickered. One by one, they fell, and crashing into the desert with thunderous force. Mira opened her eyes. Her hands stopped glowing. "It's done," she whispered. Kyle closed the gate. The mountain slowly dimmed, its fire fading into silence. All that remained was a glowing crater. Calm, quiet, peaceful. Harris stepped out of the truck, shaking his head. "You realize what just happened? The government, the Seekers, and they'll all be looking for her now." Ethan nodded. "Then we disappear." The bridge between worlds. Days later, they reached the ocean. The world was still, as if holding its breath after the storm. Ethan stood on the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Lyra stood beside him, holding Mira's hand. "Where will we go?" she asked. Ethan looked toward the horizon. "Where no one's looking. Maybe find that place Kale talked about." "The cradle." Mira smiled softly, pointing to the sky. "It's calling us." Lyra looked at her daughter, half human, half Valaran, and for the first time since the crash, she smiled too. "Then we'll answer." Behind them, Harris loaded supplies into a small boat hidden among the rocks. "You sure about this, son?" he asked. Ethan looked back. "No, but it's better than waiting for the next war." The sea wind picked up, carrying the smell of salt and something else. Electric, ancient, alive. As the boat drifted away, the sky shimmered faintly. A small beam of blue light followed them, the last whisper of Kale's spark, guiding them toward the unknown. "Every ending," Ethan whispered, looking up at the stars, "is just the start of another world." And the ocean swallowed their reflection as they disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind Earth and beginning the next chapter of the human Valaran legacy, the end.